Vijmandaya Krishmastai Bhutare Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Devan Gauravani Pacharani Nivarsesha Sunyavadi Vashkata Deshatarne. Okay, so what we're going to show you this evening is what the universe looks like according to the Bhagavatam, predominantly, I believe it's the third canto where we get a lot of information about time elements within the universe. And so as a matter of reference, we're going to start right here where it says we are here, and we're going to show what most people should be familiar with here, which is basically the last 2,000 years is right here. Our whole Gregorian calendar actually works with or starts at the birth of Christ. So the whole Western world, and I believe most of the Asian world, because it is our calendar, is familiar with when Jesus Christ was born and died. And so that's our landmark for this map. And there's everything, I've tried to illustrate everything. So you see this bar goes down. You're going to see a lot of this as we walk through this. This is the biblical era. And because I've done this for different audiences, again, particularly in the Western world, people are familiar with Christianity. And so they have a sense of when things like Abraham happened somewhere, almost 1,800 years before Jesus was born. And then Moses is in here somewhere. Some of the personalities that we're more familiar with, of course, is Sankaracharya. And he lived for 33 years, and that was from the year 1788 to 821. And that's demarked by these little brackets here. And if we look at the top side of this, we'll see that Islam began somewhere in this little area here. 62 years is when Muhammad lived, and from 570 to 632. And of course, Lord Buddha is in here also. This is the current Lord Buddha, not the one that I believe happened way, way back in time, which I don't think there's a lot of information on that. But this is the one that I think modern Buddhism is sort of founded on. So this is our reference point. Each one of these blocks here represents 1,000 years. So if this is Jesus Christ, that's 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years before Christ, which is approximately when the Iron Age of Kali Yuga began, right here. And we're going to go in that direction in a minute, but before we do, I want to take you in the other direction. And so I put the arrow out here, which is really probably proportionally a little out of proportion because we're probably more close to this area right here. But you get the sense that we're certainly past the year 2000. We're somewhere 2018 right now. So in order to fully illustrate some more critical points, milestones on the calendar, I've taken this little area here and I've expanded it down here because Lord Chaitanya himself appeared, about 1486 to 1534 for those 48 years. And if we drag the map over like this, you will see that this little bar here is expanded, and that's when Lord Chaitanya began the Sankirtan movement. And so we see an illustration showing that with the Hare Krishna mantra. So again, that's a landmark on the last 1,000 years, which I've opened up. And of course, there's some other important people that we might want to pay attention to here. His Madhvacharya. So he lived for apparently 79 years, from 1238 to 1317. So he's on here. And then, of course, we want to honor and acknowledge the presence of Srila Prabhupada's appearance. And so he lived for this, and now I'm kind of shifting here a little bit, born in 1896 to 1977. These are prominent landmarks along the way of his life. And so that would be, according to the map here, it would be this area space right here. And if you can't see something, let me know, because I'm looking at the screen here and I'm assuming, and it looks like it's duplicating pretty good. Okay, And so I think most of us have some sense of familiarity with these landmarks in Srila Prabhupada's life. Of course, his appearance is at the bottom, and it goes all the way up until we hit somewhere right around here in 1965 is when he came to America on the Jaladuta. And then we have prominent dates in the unfolding of the whole Hare Krishna movement. And we have a nice picture of Srila Prabhupada over here honoring his contributions. But we don't stop there. We continue to go down in elements of time because the Bhagavatam is a fascinating piece of literature and provides us with information on things that is almost sometimes hard to comprehend. And in this case, we're now going to go down into smaller and smaller and smaller elements of time till we get to the point of time, which is fascinating when you think about it, is the time it takes for the ray of sun to travel from one side of the atom to another side of an atom, to the same atom. And if you think about that, we're talking about the fastest thing we know, even in modern science, crossing over the smallest thing we know, according to modern science, and the Vedas tend to concur with this. And when you have these two elements, the fastest thing going over the smallest thing, you have a situation where there can be never any division of that. There's no need to divide it, because there's never going to be a smaller element of time. Whereas right now, in the computer industry, those of you who are familiar with it might realize they use the word nanoseconds, which is a second in the world of electronics and computer processing and stuff is a long time. You can do a whole lot of stuff in a second, especially with some of these supercomputers. But in the case of electricity going across a circuit, you can't go any faster. Electricity, for the most part, travels the speed of light. So anyhow, so let's drill down here a little bit. So what we have is we have here the calendar. And I try to add, I've done quite a variety of different charts, and based on the response to this evening's presentation, maybe we'll do another one tomorrow, and we'll see how many we do. So in this case, I've added a whole lot of stuff here. We have January, February, March. Of course, this is the Western way of keeping track of time. The Vaishnav calendar, or the Vedic calendar, is a little bit different, and I've put in the different names here to indicate that. Let me see here. So here we have the predominating deity, if you look across this way, for each one of these months. These are the actual names of the Vedic months, I believe. Yeah, predominating deity for the Vedic month. Here we have what we were all referred to as Chaturmas, which are these months right here. And then underneath it, there is actually a coordination, and I can't share a whole lot of details on this, but I found the reference. Apparently there's a coordination for the different markings of the body to the months. And so I added that in here also. Now we're going to continue the drill down. So what I've got, and then here I'm trying to show, it says, and if you look closely, I'm not going to refer to all of these, but it's on the map. This whole chart has been built directly off of the references that are found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Like I said, Canto 3. There may be some other ones that I've pulled in from other BBT books, but for the most part, this map is really concentrating on that. And it explains that we have seasons, and we all know there's a summer and a winter season. And so again, the Bhagavatam is giving some information on that. It says 2 of each month comprise one season, and 6 months comprise one complete movement of the sun from south to north. And so I'm showing here how the sun is moving, and we do know that the sun apparently, obviously in the winter it's cold, in the summer it's warm, and that's reflected in the way that this is happening here. And then if we go up, now we're going to do, and I'm not going to go through every one of these, you can sort of see what's happening here. But then we have what's referred to as a fourth night. And what it's going to do now is it's going to start breaking down. So the first thing it did, it broke down a year to 2 seasons. And now it's going to break down those seasons into months, referred to as fortnights. The aggregate of 2 fortnights is 1 month, and that period is 1 complete day and night for the Pitta planets. Again, there's a reference here. So I'm trying to show that. And if you look here, I believe these bars represent the days in the month, and I've broken it up here a little bit too. 1 full day of the resonance of the Pitta planet. So I'm doing this all the way as we go all the way back. And then if you look here, so this span from this side to this side is approximately 1 month. and I believe the Vedic months start sort of in the middle of the Western Gregorian months, so that's why this is spanning over September like that. But then if you see this little tiny bar, and that's why I broke it up, this little tiny bar is now expanding, kind of like a funnel, a funnel opening up to show what's happening in this one. And if we continue to go up into the chart, we'll say it is calculated that there are 4 praharas, which are also called yamanas, it looks like. Hold on here. In the day, and 4 in the night of one human being. So we're talking about the time of one day. And so again, I'm showing one day with the sun up and the sun down. So that's kind of one day. So then again, the day is divided into, we tend to think of it in terms of hours, 24 hours in a day. But in this case, I believe the Vedic terminology is the muhurtas, and they have some other terms here. 15 lagus make up one nadika, which is also called the danda. 2 dandas make up one muhurta, and 6 and 7 dandas make up 1/4 of a day or night, according to human calculations. So it's getting a little technical. I don't want to lose everybody here, but I just want to show that this sort of reasoning continues, where this quarter of whatever it is, 1/4 of a day. So again, I'm breaking that up, and I'm splitting it again into the next reference that the Bhagavatam is giving. And I've got the appropriate names for each one of these, and if you really wanted to study this, you could go in there and you could find these references. And to give us some sense, something a little bit more that we can kind of wrap our brains around and comprehend, what you'll find here is this is time that we generally think of things. So this is 1.6 minutes. One of these little blurps here is 1.6 minutes. And then that gets divided, and it goes down to 6.4 seconds. And if we continue to drill down, as they say, you can sort of see it happening over here, what is actually happening, until we get down to really fractions and hundreds of thousands of a second in time down here. And I could read through all these things, but I'm not sure if it's necessary. But I do want to point out that as we drill down here through all these different terms, and again, each one of these things opening up so we can actually illustrate the next division of time. You can see here 1 truti is just a tiny little tick on this thing, but it's actually, it's a very, there's what it is in terms of a second. We're talking hundreds, thousands of a second. But here's where we get to what I was saying earlier, is in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada gives us, I believe this is in the purport, because there's a P there, the time covered by the sun in passing over an atom is calculated as atomic time. So I'm trying to show the sun crossing over the atom, and that's why these arrows are here, giving some sense of crossing over the atom. And of course, like I said earlier, really think about this, the fact that this was written, whatever, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and somehow they had some sense of this type of analysis of the world we live in, with the fastest thing crossing over the smallest thing. You're never going to need to divide that in order to figure out how to build a calendar. So going back up through all of this, we're going to go back. So that's the smallest element of time, and we're going to go back up, bumping through all of these layers till we get back down here to where Srila Prabhupada is born and all of his predominant contributions at different times in his life. And then we go back here for the last 1,000 years of all these personalities. And then we go up here for the last 1,000 years, and we go another 1,000 years, the birth of Lord Christ, and then another 1,000 years, and we get back here close to 2,000 years of Abraham, and all these other things are going on. And now we're going to actually start going back in history, according to the way the Bhagavatam gives us history. And so we are all familiar with this concept of Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. So we've got it here. And each one of these yugas is progressively longer by, I believe, 120,000 celestial years. So they get bumped. So Kali Yuga, and I've tried to illustrate it to give some sense. Most of this chart is done to scale in terms of what we're looking at right now, when we start getting further back in time and the layers of the universe, it would be impossible to do it to scale, because we would be somewhere out, the map would go all the way out to Delhi or something like that. And so I had to, take some liberties there. But here it actually is to scale. And we see here 1,200 celestial years. Again, most of us might be more familiar with human years. So here is 432,000 human years. And then we go back. Each one is progressively longer. We got 864,000 years. And again, Treta Yuga going back, Satya Yuga going back. Now, one of the things I like to point out to the devotees when I show these charts is many devotees are familiar with these different pastimes and stories, such as the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, appearance of Lord Jagannath, or in this case, we've been reading in the Bhagavatam in the morning about Hiranyakashipu. But at least for myself, I never really sort of figured out where they were on the calendar. When did these things happen? And it may not be so important, but if you wanted to know that, you'd have to dig into it a little bit. But I've already done that work for you. And you'll see here that Lord Ramachandra appeared in the Treta Yuga. And we find out that here Lord Jagannath appeared with King Indradumya in the Satya Yuga. And that's also apparently when Lord Nrsingadev, Prahlad Maharaj, and Hiranyakashipu, their Leela occurred in the Satya Yuga. And again, before we go any further, probably should show here. So again, if you see this little tiny slice coming out in this kind of beige color going behind Lord Chaitanya and Advaitacharya, and you'll see, because we know that Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad-Gita at the end of Kali Yuga, and that when Lord Krishna left our planet, that was the beginning of Kali Yuga. The battle of Kurukshetra was over, and Maharaj Pariksit was taking over. So that, therefore, is indicated right there at that juncture at the end of Kali Yuga, and we're trying to give some reference and some acknowledgement to that event by showing Krishna and Arjuna here on the chariots. Wherever there's Krishna, the master of mystics, and wherever there's Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. I believe that's the last verse in the Bhagavad-Gita. Okay, so that's what we refer to as a Divya Yuga. All four ages together consist a Divya Yuga. But it doesn't stop there. In fact, we know that there are 72 manvantaras occurring within one manu, I believe is the way it works. And in this case, so again, using the same kind of an idea here, what I'm trying to show is how, and the Bhagavatam actually tells us specifically which one we're in. It's on here somewhere, I'm not noticing it right now. But we're between the 28th and the 29th of these manvantaras. And so you can see I've tried to show it with the little with the color bars here. These are the different cycles of the Divya Yugas within that one bracket. But this 4-yuga cycle, this Divya Yuga cycle, is occurring in every one of these little blips. And there's 5, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's another 5 here, and I've marked them off 15, 20. So as I step through this, and as you see what we're dealing with, it becomes very humbling to realize just already how phenomenal the universe is. And I like to point out to people that, when we start thinking that we're so important or we're so proud or we're so significant, keep in mind how many trillions and billions of living entities have occurred during just what we're looking at right now, and we're going to keep drilling down even more. So there's the 72 manvantaras. We know, because in Bhagavad-Gita, which is over here, Krishna said, Imam vivashvate yogam proktavam aham avyayam. I originally instructed the imperishable science of bhakti-yoga to the sun god Vivishwan, and Vivishwan in turn instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to his son Ikshvaku. So Vivishwan is the father of Vishvata, Manu, who is also known as Shradava Manu, and there's the reference right there. So all of this is kind of pointing to this blip right here. I believe it's right here. And also, I want to point out that, of course, there's different manus. We don't have a whole lot of information. Certainly we don't, there's no information that I know of which is coming out after this, because this is the future over here. But this is the past, and again, the Bhagavatam does give us some references as to what's occurred in these different manus, these different eras. And it actually gives us the names of who those manus were, if you wanted to do some research on that. And it shows us, so for example here, the first Manu is Swayambhuva, and his father, of course, was Lord Brahma. And in this direction, we actually have the names of who the Manus will be. I did not find any particular references to what's going to happen in the future, but it does give us the name of who those Manus are and some of the relationships that are there. 1,000 cycles of 4 ages consist of a single day of Brahma, known as a kalpa. In that period, O king, 14 Manus comes and goes. And so there's a reference. So that's what each one of these little blips right here are all about. So if we go over here, again, I've tried to indicate using colors and so forth some of the things that have happened. So if we look at this pink bar, and it says Tamasa, and apparently these two fellows here were twins. These two Manus were twins. So we have Tamasa and we have Raivata. And in this particular pastime of Gajendra the elephant, occurred in the 4th Manu, which is known as the Tamasa Manu. And similarly, we have some of these other things occurring here, the Raivata Manu. And if we follow the green and the blue twisty things going on here, we'll see that they go down here to Lord Varaha. And one of them the green one apparently goes over here to where Prajapati Daksa offended Lord Shiva, and he rewarded him by putting a goat's head on his body. So it gives us some sense of when this happened. It was a long, 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 long time ago. And again, same thing with Lord Varaha and Matsya Avatar and Hiranyaksha occurred here. So let's keep going along, or back up in time. So these are the different Manus, but now we're going to go up into the day and evening of, I believe it's Lord Brahma. There are 14 Manvantars in one day of Brahma. So there you go. There's 14 Manvantars, all spelled out, as we just went over. And it says there's apparently the equivalent number of 4 yugas multiplied by 1,000 comprise one day on the planet of Brahma. A similar period comprises a night of Brahma, in which the creator of the universe goes to sleep. So he sleeps for an equivalent amount of time. So I guess we can deduce from this, there's not a whole lot of activity going on here because Lord Brahma is sleeping. So there may be some more research that could be done. But so we continue to go up, and we find that there are, and what I think is kind of fascinating here is that our concept of months and weeks, and not so much hours, but months and weeks, apparently, and maybe days, apparently it trickles or percolates up into the demigods and into the time of Lord Brahma, because we're finding that there are 30 days in one of the months of Brahma. And each one of those days, of course, is made up of what we just went over here, all these Manvantars. And we actually have the different names. It's in the Bhagavatam, what the names of all those different days are for 1 month of Lord Brahma. And then, of course, Lord Brahma, so here is the month, or excuse me, the whole year of Lord Brahma. Again, the months are starting maybe a little awkwardly from what we're familiar with, because in that sense, the time calendars are slightly different. And we find here the four Kumars, the Lord incarnated as Sanata, Sanat Kumar, Sanandana, and Sanatana, the four sons of Brahma. In the previous creation, spiritual truth was devastated, but the four Sanatas explained it so nicely that it was clearly perceived by the sages. So this is happening up here, right at the very beginning of time as we know it in this particular universe. But yet there's still even another layer of time divisions. And again, keep in mind what's happening here. Each one of these is collapsing. In this case, it's collapsing into this little tiny niche on this ruler, you might say. And again, the Bhagavatam tells us that Lord Brahma, the one that's currently running the universe, is just past his 50th year. And I believe he lives, it says right here, Lord Brahma lives for 100 years. And his one day is calculated as, what do we got here? 4,300,000,000 years of our earthly years. His night is of the same duration. His month consists of 30 such days, which we're showing here. Or actually down here. 30 such days and nights, and his year of 12 months, that's up here. After 100 such years, when Brahma dies, the devastation or annihilation takes place. I believe that's referred to as a Mahakalpa. Okay, so a couple other interesting things. So this is Lord Brahma, and we've all heard how Lord Brahma sprouts from the navel of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is laying down in the Garbhodak ocean, which I believe is the ocean that the universe fell into, which needed to be rescued by Lord Varaha. But there's actually two different Varahas. There is the white Varaha. I believe it's there's a red one and a white one. Let me just look here. I should have illustrated it properly. And here is the other Varaha right here. This is the one who fought with Hiranyakashipu. But there's apparently another appearance of him right at the very beginning of the universe, and he came out of the nose of Lord Brahma. There's some information here regarding that. When Brahma was engaged in thinking, a small form of a boar came out of his nostril. Let me see if we can make that a little bigger for you. The measurement of the creature was not more than the upper portion of a thumb. There's the reference. 100 years of Brahma's life are divided into two parts. The first half of the duration of Brahma's life is already over, and the second half is now current. O descendant of Bharat, the first millennium and the second half of the life of Brahma is also known as a Varaha millennium, because the personality of God had appeared in that millennium as the hog incarnation. And I'll just read this other purport here. A part of Karanadaksha Vishnu lies down within the water. Okay, we haven't showed you that yet, but he's outside the universe. A part of the Karanadaksha Vishnu lies down within the universe, within the water of the universe, and from his navel spouts a lotus stem. From the lotus flower atop the stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifested. There's the reference. He underwent penances for 1,000 celestial years and heard the transcendental vibration from the sky, tapa, penance, and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penance he executed were a great lesson for the living deities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. So this is, we've just taken sort of a quick whirlwind walk through what's happening in our universe, the way the Bhagavatam has explained it. And a couple other interesting points is, some of you may recall that I think about 15 or 20 years ago, the scientists put up a Hubble telescope. And the principle of the Hubble telescope was that telescopes, of course, look through the atmosphere to try to see what's going out in the stars and what's on beyond our planet. And one of the difficulties they have is that because our atmosphere and the ionosphere and so forth, there's particles there and it's hard to see through it. There's junk flying around in the sky. They came up with the idea that if we actually put a telescope up that was on the other side of our atmosphere in space, we wouldn't have to try to peer through all these things. And so they did. They put up a Hubble telescope, And a little interesting sidebar here is this is an example of how human effort, no matter how wonderful we think we are, think about it for a minute. They had the best engineers. They had pretty much an unlimited American budget for the space plan, and they had significant time. And yet when they put the Hubble telescope up, and they were so excited about having an opportunity to look into the universe out as far as they couldn't even imagine how far they were going to look, and it didn't work. And the reason why it didn't work was somebody had made an error in the calculations on the curvature of the mirror. And it was a tremendous embarrassment to the space program in the United States. And of course, it cost a couple, who knows how many millions of dollars. And they had to scramble, and they finally sent another spaceship up and spacewalk and had them repair the mirror. But the interesting thing is that when they finally got it working, they were able to peer to see, or to in some way get some concept. I believe the number is 300,000 light years into the universe. And think about that for a minute. 300,000 light years into the universe. And I don't know how many people take the time to look, but if you go on the internet and you look for some of the, now in this case we're talking of photography, this is when the scientists became overwhelmed, and they went, whoa, we had no idea there's, we're in the Andromeda galaxy, I believe it's called. And they started finding whole other galaxies, not just one, two, but unlimited ones. And they have these fantastic photographs of all these other huge universes. And that's all going on, to the best of my knowledge, that's all going on within this globe. And it's not, if you look at it as I pull out here, it's not really round. I specifically made it a little oblong like an egg, because that's the way the Bhagavatam describes our universe. And in fact, again, the egg concept, I believe, goes all the way down to the way the planets are apparently revolving. I don't want to get into the universal thing, but they're not necessarily perfectly round, the orbits and so forth. So what I'm trying to point out is, even though they're now looking out into the universe by 300,000 light years, and that's all going on here, all of this is just one. If we go over here and look, all these little globes, these do appear to be a little bit more round. The same thing is happening in all of these other globes out here. And they're all coming out of the pores of Karanadakshay Vishnu, who expands himself as Garbhodakshay Vishnu into every one of them. It's mind-bending when you actually stop and take the time to comprehend what our universe, what Krishna has arranged in terms of our universe. It's, at least for myself, it's beyond my ability to fully grasp that this type of thing is happening in all of these little spheres. And it all happens when Karanadakshay Vishnu exhales. All these universes come into existence for these incredible lengths of time. That's, again, we just worked through it. It's almost incomprehensible, and that's going on so many other places. So let me just go over a couple more little things here. So this is what I mean in terms of not being able to do this to scale. If you look here, I have a little key, and the key says ego, sky, fire, air, water. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this very effectively. Unfortunately, the screen's a little smaller than I wanted it. But so it says here, each one of these layers, I believe it says, is 10 times thicker than the one in front of it. So I tried to show that a little bit, and I tried to color code it. So the water is the first thing that surrounds our universe. Let me see if I can read this. I'm going to read this as it goes around and wraps around the universe. The phenomenal material world is expanded to a dimension, to a diameter of 4 billion miles as a combination of the 8 material elements transformed into 16 further categories within and without as follows. The layers of elements covering the universe are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all of the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. And there's the reference to the Bhagavatam. And let me go read the other one to see what it says here. So like I said, these are each 10 times thicker. I couldn't exponentially, it would be too ridiculous, but you can get some sense of what it is here. And then here, same thing. So this one, ego, is the one that's being shown. This universal egg, or the universe in the shape of an egg, is called the manifestation of material energy. Its layers of water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva increases in thickness one after another. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one, and the final outside layer is covered by Pradhan. Within this egg is the universal form of Lord Hari, whose body the 14 planetary systems are parts. So all of this is happening here, and one more little thing we'll show over here to give some sense. I'll try to read this to help people see what it is. Okay, so here's Karanadakshai Vishnu. Let's bring it up big so everybody can see it. Vishnu has three forms called Purushas. The first, Mahatattva Karanadakshai Vishnu, is the creator of the total material energy, Mahat. The second is Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is situated within each universe. And the third is Kishoradakshai Vishnu, who lives in the heart of every living being. We sometimes refer to him as Paramatma. He who knows these three becomes liberated from the clutches of Maya. Let's go a little further here. The first Purusha casts his glance at Maya from a distance, and thus he impregnates her with the seed of life in the form of the living entities. These references will be clarified at the end. The reflected rays of his body mix with Maya, and thus Maya gives birth to a myriad of universes. The Purusha enters each and every one of the countless universes. He manifests himself in as many separate forms as there are universes. Think about that for a minute. It's not like these are cookie-cutter universes. Each one of these universes are unique in their own way. He manifests himself as many separate forms as there are universes. When the Purusha exhales, the universes are manifested with each outward breath. Thereafter, when he inhales, all the universes again enter his body, just as atomic particles of dust pass through the opening of a window. Sometimes we see in a screen the sun coming through. We'll see little pieces of dust floating in the air. We don't normally see it, but when there's a bright light of sunlight on a dark background, we can see it. So they're trying to give this analogy, and I don't know about you, but when I see that dust, it looks like there's all sorts of particles flying around in the air, and they're saying, well, that's kind of what the universe is like. There's just billions of universes flying around. Therefore, when he inhales, all the universes again enter his body. Just as atomic particles of dust pass through the opening of a window, so the networks of universes pass through the pores of the skin of the Purusha. The Brahmas, and the other lords of the mundane world appear from the pores of Mahavishnu and remain alive for the duration of his one exhalation. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, of whom Mahavishnu is a portion of a plenary portion. So in this case, I've actually pulled this from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then finally, all of this, we've heard the reference sometimes that the material world is 1/4 of the entire creation, which is really, depending on how many ways you want to split hairs on that, we've also heard that the spiritual world is unlimited, so you can't really have 1/4 of something that's unlimited, but it gives us some sense of what's happening. Thank you. Thank you. I think I'll just hold off on that, but thank you. So I did want to point out this, where I come from in Ojai, California, there's a lot of people that are following these other not so informative philosophies. And we heard a lot about the Brahmajyoti. So I'm showing here, so this is, again, this map is maybe a little bit inverted because we're showing the spiritual world is really just a very tiny portion. If I pull out, it's a very small portion on the entire map right here. So in that sense, the map is completely out of scale, but for the sake of illustrating, we had to do that. But I am trying to show here that there's the Brahmajyoti that's glowing from the spiritual world. And there's two references I'd like to share before we close. The Advaitists, Mayavadi philosophers who strictly follow austerities and penances, are elevated to the impersonal Brahman platform, Brahmajyoti, effulgence of the Lord. But due to their negligence of the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down to material existence. That's another reference from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then finally, here it is here, and I actually have it illustrated in the Brahmajyoti, which is referenced here. And also, I kind of made this secondary reference because, at least where I preach, you hear people always talking about the white light. There's a lot of talk about the white light. So this is what they're referring to, the Brahmajyoti, the effulgence of God. Lord Brahma worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, whose personal effulgence is the unlimited Brahmajyoti. In that spiritual aura, there are innumerable universes, each filled with innumerable planets. Oh, we got one more reference here. To those who think they are liberated in this life, but are without devotional service to Krishna, are of impure intelligence, although they accept severe austerities and penances and rise to the spiritual position of impersonal Brahman realization, they fall down again because they neglect to worship your lotus feet. Again, a reference to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I'd like to close this by, again, reminding people, I know when I work on things like this, and particularly this particular map, it's very humbling when you actually think about, we have Prabhupada's life here on this planet, obviously, because he's made such a significant contribution, but I don't even know what the world population is right now, but it's somewhere up there. And we're just one planet within many of the trillions of planets that's within this globe. That's one of the many trillions of globes that are coming out of the pores of Karanadakshay Vishnu. Think about that the next time you're feeling a little bit proud about something. It tends to make you put your feet back on the ground and put things all in perspective. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But that's pretty much our tour through the... Oh, by the way, I didn't really mention this, but this is Kalki, and this is Vamanadev. They come later. At the end, this is actually at the end of the universe, which is why it's illustrated like that. You know, I think I actually did put the number on here. Let's just see here. Yeah, here it is, right here. This is what you're asking about. Lord Brahma lives for 100 years. Now, keep in this case, they're talking about Brahma's 100 years, which is celestial years, and his one day is calculated as 4,300,000,000,000 of our earthly years. Is that what you're? Remember, this is.
It's calculated as 4,300,000,000 of our earthly years, one day of Brahma. And Brahma lives for 100 years.
Yes.
And I remember once I did the calculations, and I came up with Brahma's lifespan was 311 trillion.
Yeah, you know, I think I did that calculation too. I actually have an earlier version of this, and apparently it didn't make it onto this map. I think I had at one point, I did have that, because it's such a huge number with all these zeros on the end. It's very impressive.
I have your, you must have done the other poster. I think I must have your poster.
Oh, really?
That's very similar to this.
Yeah, is it like a line drawing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Where are you from?
Denver.
Denver. Okay, yeah, you might have it.
Yeah, no, I just got it, and so it's very nice. It's on my altar, and it's really helped may expand my mind to
Yeah,
understand
it does.
Krishna.
It does humble you, you know. You're like, whoa. Yeah, that was the early one. I did that in 1984. And yeah, well, you're confirming what I thought. Anyhow, for interest's sake, I've been talking with David Shakti. I've given her a couple copies of this poster. This is available. This is actually a 24 by 36 inch paper poster, just like the one you
Yeah.
have.
Yes.
By doing it on the computer, I was able to cram a whole lot more information in here. Anyhow, it sounds like she's going to see what kind of interest there is. I'll probably be giving the same seminar to Kolkata before we go to the Mayapur Festival. I'm trying to find some responsible parties in India to be able to act as the distributor so that and I've got a whole series of charts that I've been working on where they'll be printing them here and then they can be made available. And if they do decide to print them, now I'm kind of feeling that Krishna is telling me, because I can find some space on here to put that number on here, because it's one of these numbers with like 30 zeros on the end or something.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal number.
I think I do have the one that's very similar. You must have done it with a computer. I think the copy date was 2002. Could that be?
You might be talking about, there's another map of the universe which is a little different. I believe it was done by Bhakti Vikas Swami and his team, who I'm going to be seeing in Delhi when we leave Vrindavan. And I believe that's more of the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems.
Yeah.
And I think, actually, I have one. They gave me one.
It's a pretty big poster.
Yeah, it's like a wall. It's like 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall or something like that.
Well, it's not. Well, the one I have, it's
Yeah.
just
Well,
a
they might have a
poster.
smaller version too. Yeah. But that's a little different. This is really focusing on the divisions of time, and there is more focusing on the different layers of the system, which is, I believe, part of the reason why they did that is because that's, to the best of my knowledge, that's what the Vedic planetarium in Mayapur is going to be making on the mobile in a three-dimensional form.
Yeah, we were just there.
Okay, good,
It's kind of
good.
amazing.
I'm going to try to, I want to get this there too, because it seems like this should be in that gift shop or whatever. This is kind of related to it. So, does anybody else have any questions or comments they'd like to share before we shut down here? Unfortunately, there's only 2 or 3 of them here in Vrindavan at the time. I do have some waiting for me to pick up when I get to Calcutta. And like I said, I'm hoping that I'll be able to make an arrangement to get them printed here. It doesn't make any sense for me to have them printed in the United States and then ship them to India when they can print them in India for half the price they can print them in America. So, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Anybody that's interested, I have a business card. I don't want to turn this into like kind of a cheap commercial advertisement, but I have a website called jagannath.com. And I have a whole series of charts, and I don't know if we're going to do this again tomorrow night. If we do, the topic tomorrow night will be the conditioned soul and the knowledge acquiring process, which I've illustrated in a kind of a similar technique. And then I've got it on the 4 legs of Dharma, the 4 different yoga systems, the 3 modes of nature, the 3 aspects of Godhead, and a whole series of charts. Plus all sorts of Jagannath paraphernalia. So if anybody's interested, you can see it all on the website, and you can get it there. And if you're in Denver, it's not a problem. You know, it's shipping to India is where it gets very messy.
Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Oh, Haribo.
Yeah. But is there any time factor in Golok Dham, or there is no time? How the time is measured, or there is no time as such?
That's a good point. I believe you're correct that time is an element that occurs in the material world. The material world, the element of time is what makes it distinctive. And we all have our relationship with time. Some of us use it very wisely and thoughtfully, and some of us flitter it away. And also, you know, this is the first time I've been back in Vrindavan since the last 38 years. And I actually was helping to build, if my computer worked, you would have had a chance to see it, but I have a photo of myself working on the Samadhi when it was just a superstructure, the concrete. So the reason why I bring that up is because I've been back for 38 years, and of course, obviously, there's a lot of changes. I mean, when I was here, it was a dirt road, and there were open sewers with pigs swallowing in the sewers. And you just walked the Lowy Bazaar, and it was a whole experience. But now it's life-threatening because of all the rickshaws. But I mean, it was a small little village. But the point is that time moves on, and things change. And my personal realization on that is that time element is another way the universe is conspiring to kick us in the head to make you realize that, whoa, because none of us want to get old. None of us want to, time causes a lot of suffering and pain. So it's part of the reason why it's there to help to remind us that this is not the place that we belong. And in the spiritual world, there is no element of time. Krishna says, time I am, and I've come to destroy all things. Right? So good observation. Thank you for pointing that out. So that's occurring right here inside the little lotus flower. Anything else anybody would like to comment on? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your attendance. Sorry about the technical problems. If we do it tomorrow, I'll get out here, try to get this. I don't know why.